see you bounce. Put your back into it now. Baby, let me let you know. Shake it up, shake it up. Let me see you bounce. Let me see your body rock. Baby, show me what you got. Take it up, take it up. Let me see you bounce. Get up, on the ground. Shake it up, shake it up. Let me see you bounce. Let me see your body rock. Baby, show me what you got. Take it up, take it up. Let me see you bounce. Get up, on the ground. DJ, go play it loud. Brinca, brinca. Let me see you bounce. Brinca, brinca. Let me see you bounce.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me back. This is Elaine, dog trainer, and today I brought with me as very special guest, Chester here. This is Chester's owner, Scott, and Scott is actually the vice president of the Quaker Club of America. United States, and this is a Quaker Hund. For most people, when I say Quaker, what? They will go kind of asking me, what kind of dog is this? Chester is a very, very rare breed. I don't think there's that many even in the United States. Scott can probably tell you a little bit histories about that.
Yeah. About 200 dogs now in the United States, but
only
growing.
200s. And they're originated from Netherlands, I heard, right? Correct? And this is considered a Dutch decoy waterfowl hunting dog. They are bred very specifically to help the Dutch family back in the history, based on my research, to push the duck into a trap so that the duck hunter can hunt the duck a bit easier. And given that said, I think these guys are definitely born natural swimmers. They're really, really good at swimming. And I think by just looking at Chester when he was a puppy, I think maybe Scott even got this a lot. Is it a Brittany? Is it a Brittany mix? Brittany is a really well-recognized AKC, obviously a sporting breed, but sometimes when you see a dog like that, they're either going to say it's a Brittany mix or a rescue mutt or something. By the time you tell them the name, they know that he's special. One of the ways to tell that this is a Quaker Hund and how I learned it from my own training research is that they have a very unique and very special coat of hair. They're one of the most distinguished thing about a Quaker is that they have these very nice black feather tip hair on their face. And one of these feather tip hair actually is based on their genetic. I've learned that even from Scott a little bit. Meaning of, if the dog is born without the black hair when they were a puppy, the black tip at the end of the ears does not develop very well. It's actually based on the Quaker conformation speaking, is actually considered a fault. We can't really make them a champion in their conformation in terms of the breed standard speaking. And one of the other things about the black hair is that back in the day when they were breeding them, with their breeding, they introduced a bunch of dogs that have a lot of black fur just to get that coloring going, and result till today they have the orange and white and a little bit of black coat. Chester is probably born with a little bit more black hair throughout his body, and then throughout the time he gets older and age, which his coat takes about 2 years to develop. One of the really unique things that goes on about the color, they have white, orange, and black tips. And then as he begins to age, the black tip kind of goes away, and the only part that keeps it is going to be the special, almost like a papillon feature looking ears with those little earrings that we call them. So from now on, if you're walking on the street, you see a dog with black tipped earrings, either it's going to be a Quaker Hund or it's going to be a Quaker mix now this time. Hopefully the breed gets more popular in the United States. One thing that I learned about Quaker for myself, especially their coat, Scott was telling me a real interesting story before the show that Chester can dig, and then minute after he digs a big old pond of mud, he's totally clean. One of the things that I learned about their hair that takes so long to develop, it's pretty sting-proof. This is a breed that go in the swim, comes back out, shakes his body. Their hair kind of almost in a sense is waterproof, dust-proof, dirt-proof. I think I'll let Scott kind of carry on from this point and tell us a bit about his special sting-proof hair coat. Some interesting story that you can share.
Well, the dogs, when they weren't used for hunting, were used on the farms to kill vermin. So they're like terriers in that sense, so they do like to dig. And if there's a wet hole in our backyard, he'll find it and dig. But like Elaine said, in a short period of time after it dries, the coat seems almost self-cleaning. I love it because we don't have to really give him so many baths even after he likes to go get dirty. And he does shed a little bit, but not a lot. And so very minor grooming is really all we have to do to keep his coat looking good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I think one of the special features. Sometimes people are looking for a dog that they go, I don't want to spend too much money in grooming. I mean, for example, for myself, I have a Bichon. It's grooming all the time. You don't brush his hair, it goes into a knot. I think for this particular breed, it makes him such an excellent dog is that the grooming part of it, you can really save a whole lot. One of the other things that I learned about a Quaker is a temperament. One thing I know about the breed with the temperament is they can be very alert. They do make a very excellent companion family dog because one of the things about Quaker is that once they spend time to get to know a family member and once they spend time to know you, I think they're kind of breed that will remember you forever. They kind of coin that person and they remember the person forever. But on the contrast, they could also be quite territorial, quite alert due to their instincts of being a hunting in nature and a waterfowl dog. Meaning of that, I did learn about a breed that they're so smart, so intelligent, really willing to please, but proper socialization is huge on this particular breed. Getting them from a reputable breeder, pay attention to their breeding standard. I think that's one thing that your club is definitely striking to work on making them more recognizable in America and in the country, and also pay attention to the health. And relating back to the temperament, I think here, nature nurture often go together. When I'm doing training, I sometimes say earlier when I was mentioning about Ramo, same thing. You know, I've seen German Shepherd, they come into class, they can hardly focus. And sometimes I go, well, they're not Rin Tin Tin, but part of it could be just nature and nurture. Genetic plays a big, huge role. But if you get a dog genetically, it's good. You give them the good, right amount of coaching, right amount of training, it makes them an excellent breed. But again, with the genetic breeding here with Chester, I know the temperament by themselves, they could be kind of rare around stranger. They can sometimes kind of be a little bit withdrawal, but it takes time to warm up. They're not the breed that is really loud. They makes a really good hunting, watching dog, but they're not a very big yapper. They typically keep themselves quite quiet. They don't bark a lot like a typical small size terrier. I'm assuming you will agree with me here. But they do definitely taking care of the family, being a family companion job very serious. I think Chester also I would consider almost like a European version of a German Shepherd because it can also be a very good versatile breed. I can see this breed excellent in water retrieve, excellent in doing tricks, excellent in doing rally. He's the kind of dog that has the energy to go for any kind of fun events. Kayaking, I think, was one of Chester all-time favorite event.
He does like to ride in the boat.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he likes to ride in the boat. It's a natural water dog. I grew up, well, I had two dogs that doesn't swim. Even though I'm not a big swimmer, but I'm looking for a breed that definitely draws my attention is that he can naturally like water instead of have to push him with the floaty down the water and seeing my dog drown. One of the things that attracted me, and I'm actually planning on getting a Quaker myself, was that it's the size. I really think that I can't really consider them a medium breed. In the same time, I can't consider them a small breed. I think they're just a right huggable size. As you can see, sit on your lap just fine. They're not too little that you're going to step on and kill them. They're not too big where you can't drag them out of the car. The males are usually a bit bigger.
Up to 40 pounds
Yep.
according to the
Right.
standard and 17 inches at the shoulders.
And how much does Chester weigh right at this point?
I want to say 25, 26 pounds.
Okay. Is he going to
and
get any
is-
bigger?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah, so he's a pretty good size. He's about almost a year, right?
A year and 3 months.
Yep, year and 3 months, and this is basically how big he's going to be. And again, the breeding does vary, correct? Yeah, some of the
Yeah.
dog could be a little bit
Yeah,
bigger, a little bit-
I've seen males up to 40 pounds, and they're females smaller, of course, than Chester.
Is there any features different between male and female?
No, I don't believe so.
So they look exactly
but they
the
both
same.
should have the distinguishing black earrings.
One of the things that when I was looking into getting a Quaker myself is that their litter usually are often quite small when they're doing their breeding, and I don't know, it's just one of the things that they're working on with their particular breed, but it's not uncommon to see that. Sometimes people ask, hey, how come these dogs are so expensive? And you go, well, example, English Bulldog needs to have a C-section to actually give birth, so the puppy usually range about 3,000 to 5,000. I think Chester is right around the 2,000, 3,000 range easily. Part of it is because they are rare. Second of all is also because their litter comes in quite small, not like a Mastiff, where sometimes when they have a puppy, they could have a puppy litter of 12 or 10, or Labradors and things like that. They usually have a litter of about 4, maybe
Five.
5 at the most. And most of the time that's it, and they're still considered such a rare breed that there's not that many actually around. Yeah.
But the club is trying to promote safe genetic breeding, but also trying to increase the gene pool in the United States. So we are working with Dutch breeders to import some puppies in order to do that.
Very good. Yeah, and with Chester, how I met him with his training background, he's a very, very sweet dog. I really do enjoy meeting him. It's quite interesting because I've always actually known about Quaker, never seen one in real life, and I think the attraction here with Scott and his family is the minute they saw him, they fall in love with the way he is, the way he looks, and I think that's the same thing that attracted me to the breed as well, and why I really looking forward to bring him on the show today. Because it's definitely a very special, very beautiful breed. I think everywhere he goes, he attracts a lot of attention. People ask about them, and it's wonderful. Yeah.
Did you take him to any events?
We haven't yet. We're thinking to do some agility training in the future.
I think he was at the Kobo show a couple of times, right? Yeah, he had attended some of the event that the club have hosted, just because there's so limited amount of dog in the Michigan. I know another person in Michigan that has a Quaker that I've talked to through another client of mine, and there's Scott. I mean, I kind of said to myself, what are the odds? The dogs are so rare in Michigan State, and I happen to train one, and no other person that owns one. I'm like, you know what? That's my next dog right there.
So just prior to AKC recognition, they're considered part of what they call Service Dog Foundation. So they're not fully recognized yet by the AKC, but we'll be back down at Cobo Hall at that dog show. It's usually in late January, in the middle of winter, and he will be there along with some other rare breeds this year as well, next year as well.
Yeah, in the last show that I was on, we had the Coton, Coco, and Coton de Tulare. Right now, it's basically the same situation as the Quaker as well. They're not legitimately listed at the American Kennel Club, but they're definitely under that special breed waiting to be recognized at this point. I think along with some other breed as well, the Kova, some of the other ones are in the club. Numbers of them. There's some Czechoslovakia dog. They're their hunting dog. Dogs are a little bit more rare. But I think sometimes they're actually a whole lot more rare breed around the world than is to they can discover. Sometimes even in Africa, the different kind of breeds. To me, breed makes it some kind of importance in training. I think part of it is finding the right breed that matches what you want to do. What you want to do for your training. I mean, do you want to have a dog that just sit on your lap to be a companion? Do you want a dog that actually do jobs? Such as, earlier we have Michaela on the show. She's falling into more of a herding breed situation. So they usually are more excellent to doing things like agility, fly ball, things that requires higher energy. Not that I cannot see a Shih Tzu running through a fly ball agility ring, but sometimes you have the stamina. Breeds such as Alaskan Malamute, Husky, Mastiff, they are bred for working capability speaking. They do have to have the stamina, proper diet, proper training, and proper care. The Quaker, actually, when I did my research and looking into it, when I was interested about the breed, they weren't new breed. They actually have quite a bit of a history back in Europe in Dutch family, correct?
Yeah, but they almost died out in the 1930s.
That is
leading up
true.
to World War II, and they were rescued by someone in the court in the Netherlands.
I think one of the prince actually was saved. His own life was saved by a very, very loyal Quaker, and from that point going forward, they actually were able to save the extinction of the breed. But if you look at some of the history book, maybe focus on Dutch history, I guess, you may actually find there's painting pictures with a reddish, whitish color looking dog on the picture, and this is it right here. So that's definitely not a really new breed. It's not a new genetic breed that we just created. He has his own history where he comes from, which is a really nice thing.
But I was just in the Netherlands on business, and I asked a number of Dutch colleagues about this breed, and there's many people even in the Netherlands that don't know about the breed.
Oh, that is very interesting. Very interesting, yeah. And how many is actually in this area right now that you know?
Oh, I've met 2 or 3 in the Southeast Michigan area.
Exactly.
There may be more, but...
Yeah, Yeah. So there's really not that many in even actually in where we're at. And I said, kind of like me, the couple weeks after I actually got Chester in the class, I was really excited finally to get the time to meet the breed in person. And I remember back then, Animal Planet, there was a show that actually introduced it, the Dog Breed 101. There was a segment on Quaker. And I immediately got a hold of Audrey Auden, who was this host on the show. And I told her, I got to meet a Quaker. I mean, I was online talking to her, but you can see my eyeball just bugging out going, yeah, there's a Quaker actually I got to meet. And everywhere I go, I tell people, do you know what it is? Do you know what it is? And one of the sad things I think owning a rare breed is kind of a funny thing to say. You don't get to buy anything with a breed on it. You can't go to the pet store and buy a sticker that I love golden retriever. You can't go to any kind of boutique and buy a shirt that says I love my Chihuahua, or buy a mat nap for your car. If you want one that says I heart my Quaker, you got to make it yourself, right? That could be one of the downfalls. People can't even buy your gifts that says, have a little Yorkie face on it, or German Shepherd, one of those more classic breed. I think that's one of the downfalls of owning a Quaker. Yep.
You're always explaining the name, yes.
Exactly. It's not a cookie, it's a Quaker. There are a couple of people that actually looked at it and go, how did you even say it? I go, well, just call them Quaker dog. The other way of calling them, I think, is a Dutch water dog, or Dutch decoy dog, duck decoy dog. They have a very, very hard, deep Dutch heritage to it. I do think that with Chester, with my experience training him, one of the things that I learned about is very similar to training my other dog. I don't like to use a lot of harsh technique on breeds like this, especially if I don't have a lot of histories knowing the breed, knowing their temperament, knowing how they're actually gonna work with me as a trainer. When I focus with Chester, a lot of things just involve thinking. I want him to think. I actually introduced it, Chester's owner, using clicker training to help him with some of his dog-to-dog introduction issues. Even basic obedience, I think the staying with the positive technique, making the dog think for you instead of forcing them to behave, seems to do pretty well with the breed. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Any questions on the breed?
I don't have any questions. Does a certain breed require a certain brand of food?
I would say the question is a yes or no. To me, selecting the food, sometimes it's the owner's choice as well. The food that fits the dog could be more so its energy and size. And another thing that I watch out for is health benefit. Some dogs are allergic to certain ingredient. So if Chester happens to be allergic to rice or chicken, I'm sure Scott will not be able to feed him those typical ingredient. With him, I think with his energy level, I wouldn't put him on something that is way too high protein, but decently, probably around 24 to 26% protein. But regular, just store-bought dry kibble for a breed like that could be okay. I don't know if there's anything special that they feed him. I don't think the controversial, right now on the market, there's a lot of raw diet going on, things like that. I think it's the convenience of the owner too. Sometimes it is healthier to feed raw, or sometimes people say it's healthier to feed fresh. My opinion on it, is it easier for you to do it? So if it's more convenience for Scott to go, hey, I don't want to thaw out a freeze-dried raw knuckle bone or something for Chester, is it easier to just scoop some freeze-dried kibble on there for him? It's probably something that the family to make choices of. To me, as long as you feed a high-quality name brand out there, which is nicely developed, pretty balanced diet, I think that's the most important. And making sure that he does not get too much treats. Sometimes that could be a problem with the calorie intakes and things like that. Yeah, I mean, he's nice and fit and trim, as you can tell, so I'm sure that they're taking really good care of him. What food does he eat? Like, is anything special? Just dry store-bought?
Dry food.
Yeah, nothing really special. He likes snacks, so I mean, chicken, whatever else he likes. And again, kind of like training, same thing. Find out what motivates your dog. What motivates my dog doesn't necessarily mean what motivates Chester. What motivates my dog could be cheese, but we have Michaela and Ramo early on the show. They might not like cheese. They might like something different. They might like Frisbee, even more peanut butter. So finding what Chester really likes is important, very important. I think another thing with selective with the breed again, besides size, grooming care, training, what fits you. Sometimes it has to also do with some people like the way they look. Some people like what they can do. And I think what I'm trying to tie into is that a lot of times it is really hard to be a trainer and then knowing that the family might have selected the wrong breed. A couple of times I actually sat in a class with a person on a Alaskan Malamute and I said, hey, you better get this dog to walking nicely before he gets 100 pounds. They look at me like, what? He's gonna get 100 pounds? I go, yes, he's gonna get probably 80, 75. They have absolutely no idea. I also have people that had a yellow lab not knowing anything about a yellow lab. I have people that own a Mastiff not knowing that it's going to be 200 pounds. I go, how could you fall in love with the breed and get the puppy and think it's going to stay small? So knowing the breed is extremely important. Please do your research. I know the holiday is coming up. Everybody's out there trying to shop a Christmas puppy. By the time I would say Valentine's Day come along, Christmas puppies are recycled in the shelter. Part of it is due to because the owners are not doing their research, looking into it. I always say the right dog will come to you somehow, somewhere. You just got to make sure that it's finding the right fit. One of the other thing that I will also say is that Halloween is coming up as well. A lot of people are taking the dog out and during trick-or-treating, having all this fun event where I work at Petsmart. We're actually going to have a fun costume event on October 19th that dog can come. Things such as, looking at the features of the dog, dressing them up. Be careful with things like that nature too. I think that's kind of important. I've actually seen dogs that have long hair get stuck on pieces of costumes and things like that. Like for him, maybe we have to pay attention to his ears because it's kind of a special feature here, or the hair and things like that. So.
I think, like you said, Elaine, researching the dog is important.
Yeah, it is really important.
The personality was one of the most important things for us as a family. And what we liked about this breed was they're very active outdoors, and they like to go outdoors. They're a hunting dog, obviously, but when they come in, they do settle down and will be quiet if that's what you want and expect.
So he's ready for any kind of family function. Doesn't matter if you're super active, not active. He fits right into what you wanted to do. Where some breed can be kind of demanding. Sometimes, and also depending on the owner too. I mean, sometimes the owner have different lifestyle where they cannot meet the need of the breed, and that another reason of how some of the breed ended up, not fitting the right family, end up in the shelter to begin with. One thing that I am really concerned looking at is already almost October coming up, and it's just the whole thing about Christmas season. People trying to get the whole idea of that Christmas puppy shopping. I got my dog as a Christmas puppy, but I know that was the right fit right off the bat. My job working at Petsmart, one of the big things I'm going to making sure is that I talk to these people. I reach out to them and tell them about there's so many different breeds out there. Take your time. It's okay. Really do the right research. You got a little Yorkie. Potty training is probably going to be hard. You get a larger size dog. You're going to feed them more food. A Mastiff is going to eat you 10 cups of food a day. It's not going to save you any money. So you got to make sure that you're right on track about the need of the dog, the breed, and that's really important. I'm kind of agreeing with everything that we have just said.
Okay. Anything else we have to say about the breed? No?
I think we're good. Right.
Well, thank you very much for
Cool.
coming to the show.
Yeah, looking forward to
audience and your guests and the new breeds, and we're gonna see each other in the next.
Oftentimes they will find whatever in the environment more interesting than working for you. Yes, they are working breed. It is extremely important to ensure that we exercise the dog before we actually ask them for any kind of task-oriented stuff. For a really, really young age shepherd, they are very high energy, so oftentimes I do recommend not just using treats, but also using toys to motivate them, because one thing about using treats, the disadvantage of using treat is that once I give him one, once I give him two, eventually at some point the dog is actually going to get full. By the time the dog gets full, the problem goes is that they're not going to feel as motivated to keep going. The analogy of using a toy is that this can go on and on and on and on. Once the dog actually is full or taking food treats, next thing they're on to is actually wanting to play, wanting to have toy. If I can get a dog that has a really, really high drive, really wants something so bad that I can actually motivate him to do any kind of obedience stuff because he has a really, really favorite love of getting a toy out, it's really easy to work with a breed. The only thing I don't want to encourage when I'm using a toy is when another dog is around, I don't want to stimulate, hey, come on. I don't want to stimulate any kind of obsessiveness over a toy. So the control of the toy is that when we introduce a new toy, a new top toy, often I have to make sure the dog understands, sit. Hey, come on. Sit. I have to make sure that I can get him to sit and lie down and relax. And I can actually hear his breathing, making sure that he's relaxed before I introduce a toy to him. Take it. Okay. Once I get the ticket somewhat under control, don't tuck the toy really hard. Now, you can use tuck toy, regular roll tuck toy, but for Ramos' case, we really enjoy Frisbee. So I want to make sure that he has something that he likes. I'm sure you can do a regular tuck toy too, but because he likes Frisbee, so we use it. I can still tuck with the Frisbee, but most importantly, I want to make sure that when I say let go, the dog do have some understanding with this before I charge this toy to make the toy much more high value. Once you give a dog a toy that's too high value, meaning if you leave it, give it to him, and he has it in his mouth, but then now you have hard time actually getting it back because the dog doesn't want to give it back, it becomes a high problem. Come on. Thank you. Very good boy. So now there's a little bit of respect between me and the dog because it's not the dog go holds a Frisbee and doesn't want to have the interaction between the toy and the owner. The dog needs to know that they wanted the interaction between the toy and the owner. It's not just, oh, I'm going to hold a toy and basically I'm going to just me play with the Frisbee by myself and there's no interaction. One thing that I also learned when I was working with German Shepherd breed, they do take a long time to develop the temperament. And sometimes because they grow up so fast, you get them when they're a little puppy, about like 8 big. I actually met Rama when it was a little teeny puppy, and then very quickly, bigger than I, he's already 5-6 times the size that he used to be. One of the things that I usually experience with people who own German Shepherds is that we're trying to ask for too much of them at a really, really quick pace. Just because we're seeing them growing up every day, we know that they're so excellent in doing obedience and doing all kinds of things based on the fact that they're a working breed. We pushes them to do all kinds of tasks, and one thing that we seems to lack, and lately I've been really focusing this in my training classes and training technique, and just to teach the dog to be relaxed. They can have all day to finish up their tasks, but because of they're such a high drive dog, you don't want them to work, just keep on working for you, and doesn't understand that at some point in life they have to just chill and relax. Having to be able to have a dog that can just chew and relax, being that they're very, very high drive, sometimes this could be a training challenge. But if we don't actually train Ramo that he can relax and be nice, even in a new situation like today on our recording with a bunch of new people and cameras and things like that in the environment, it can actually turn the German Shepherd to become very, very reactive with this situation. One thing about using food and using toys, sometimes people ask me, hey, Ramo, come here, Ramo. Hey, Ramo, come here. So do you ever stop using food, or when do you introduce toys? When a puppy is doing training classes, all the way up to their 5 months of age, I like to use a lot of food. Part of the reason is because food is easy. Most of the time the dog needs the food. But one thing that it happens with the breed is that once they hit into 5 months of age, they begin to go through teenage phase. And when they go through teenage phase, one of the problems is that it becomes trying to pay attention to whatever else is social around the area, things like toys, things like other dogs, that sort of things, where food becomes less valuable. So if you can get a puppy early, doesn't matter what breed, German Shepherd or other breed, you can use a food treat to train them as much tricks as you can possibly train. But at some point, you sometimes can say that trick doesn't have a lot of value. The only time that I would use food all the way through with the dog is when I'm training a case where the dog has something emotionally related, such as dog getting reactive with people, getting fearful around people, start barking, start charging on the dog. In those cases, we go with using food and food remedy pretty much all the way through. That is a difference between in training technique speaking. classical conditioning and operant conditioning. I think one of the biggest challenge often in my work is that I do a lot of behavior modification work, and in a minute when we introduce our audience, they can actually share some of their story, people that worked with me in the past, different issues, different problem, and the difference between training here is that there will be where a situation that you're asking them to do a task, you're asking them to do a behavior, but sometimes you have to also think about that using food, you're actually treating the dog, making them do a positive association with another dog or a person passing by, which is actually a really, really common issue here with training German Shepherd, because sometimes we think we're teaching them tasks, we're teaching them commands, but we lack a little bit in terms of the development. And then lately, I do see a lot of pretty reactive German Shepherds in the community, in the neighborhood. And part of the biggest problem is that people keep saying, well, I don't want to use food. I don't want to use a cookie because I think my dog is so smart, he's a shepherd, he can do all these commands. And I said, well, you don't have to use food, you don't have to use a cookie, but if your dog is seeing another dog passing by and is lunging at it, the best thing you can do is, big dog pass by, hey buddy, I give you a meatball. Now the dog is actually begin to associate, I get a meatball, I get a biscuit when the dog is passing by. The next thing you can worry about is treating them any kind of commands. And like I said, most importantly, have a dog that has high drive, really, really working ability. Good thing is that you can get them into training with toys. We can talk a little bit in a minute when we do the interview, but the other thing is focusing on is that knowing there are a lot of times they have feelings as well. They need to learn that they got to do positive association with things that is around in life. Getting them to be able to be relaxed is extremely important. Later on, we're going to introduce one of our special guests today, Jennifer, who does pet massage, and she can tell you a little story of herself. There, to breed such as German Shepherd, teaching them relaxation is probably the biggest lesson that I can teach them, and not just exactly showing off they can do all these kind of tasks. Cool. Anything else? Is that good? Any questions? Yeah.
The German Shepherd was overbred to the point it had some genetic problems.
Yes,
Have those
they
been
do.
eliminated from the breed, or is it still a big concern?
The biggest concern in terms of with health is their hips. I think one of the biggest things is that when we're inbreeding, we're trying to breed away from having them to have hip problem. But one of the biggest problems with German Shepherd is that they're originated in Germany and they don't have the hip problem. I mean, with Rambo, he has a really, really, really good breeding line here. You can see that he has a silver tip line on his body, which is usually indicating a first generation breeding. And I think the question here is that in America, there is a lot of inbreeding situation, meaning of we're breeding dog that doesn't have a lot of originated genes. And what is result in is that their entire statue, how the German Shepherd stands, begins to draw the line back, so they don't stand with, hey, come, stand up for a second. They don't stand with their leg leaning anymore. They actually stand with their hip falling back instead of that typical German Shepherd look that you see back in the early 90s when you see the movie Rin Tin Tin. You're like, oh, that classic Shepherd look is actually being bred out of it. But the biggest thing here is not really the size, the weight, the color. My biggest problem that I see in the inbreeding, which is shopping a German Shepherd at a pet store situation, is that I see behavioral problem. I've actually talked to veterans that are in the community in the area, have noticed that there are so many shepherds have behavioral problems. And these behavioral problems are due to irresponsible breeding, kind of where you're coming from. A lot of times I see a German Shepherd puppy, 3-4 months of age, come into group class, not able to focus. Bark and bark and bark, really, really aggressive, really, really reactive. And it finds out half the time when I'm doing my, half the time I find out what's going on with the breeding. Is that they get them from the pet store. A lot of times I ask people, hey, did you get a dog from? Most likely my answer is coming from pet store, not really doing the research. If you get it from a really, really good breeder, they are your friends for life, family companions for life. But if you get it from a pretty bad breeding, they can be almost like a genetic weapon in a sense. So, anything you guys want to know about? Yes.
Sometimes German Shepherds, like pit bulls, if they're rescue dogs, they can be aggressive. So how would you train an aggressive dog?
How how I treat an aggressive dog, it depends on the aggression. Number one, if the aggression is people related, I actually see that as a more urgent topic. Well, the reason why I see that as a more urgent topic, number one, it's because they have to live with people. So if I have a German Shepherd, or you say Pit Bull, any other breed, that's sort of where they have to live with people. I can't even walk them out of the neighborhood because they're going to be aggressive. It becomes a huge problem. It really does. And the second urgency here would be if the shepherd is aggressive around other dog. And why I list it as a second emergency is because you can manage the shepherd not to go out to the public when they see other little dogs or small-sized dogs, that sort of thing. And it goes back to earlier about finding something that motivates them, linking the good and the bad together. So if the German Shepherd, for example, is afraid of people or they're having aggression, most of the time aggression stems from two categories, fear and stress. If a dog is extremely confident by whatever background, they had good associations since they were a little puppy, growing up around people, they should not have developed fear response, which leads to reactivity behavior and leads to aggressive behavior. And that would be the time where I'm going to use food pretty much all the way through. How I would go about doing it, not feed the dog food as a really easy combined item. Basically have the dog be hungry all the time. Find something the dog really, really like. One thing I gotta be really careful is finding out where his limit is. If he sees a person 20 feet away and he's already showing aggressive signs, already showing reactivity signs, I would say have the person be 25 feet away. Have Rama only look at the person for 2 seconds and then give him a treat. Before Rama actually goes into a reaction state. Hey, come here. Good boy. That's exactly one of the times where I make a really important rule to make sure they do receive early socialization. I think one of the biggest problems here with rehab doing aggressive cases with breed is that we wait too long before actually tackle the problem. Doesn't matter if it's a shepherd, pit bull, or small sized dog. People rescue them, and sometimes they have this thing called, well, he was like that when I got him. And probably he was beaten, or he was, somebody may have, I don't know, hurt the dog, and they make up all these almost like excuses in a sense. I told them, well, now you rescue the dog, you have the dog, move on. You know, you don't have to find the time to keep trying to find out why. So instead of finding the time finding out why my dog was aggressive, why is he growling at another dog, why is this pit bull wants to kill a chihuahua, I just go, I found the time right now and be productive and let's treat him right now. Find out where his comfortable threshold is and do counter conditioning technique. One of the biggest training challenge that I often see at my own workplace is that people don't understand that training has 2 different departments. There's a department called obedience training, which doesn't matter what background you are, you can learn a new behavior, whereas the other department is behavior modification, which is basically sit, stay, doesn't help this dog. If you have a dog who is reactive, actually one of Rama's classmates that he sees on one of his classes were a very, very stranger, aggressive dog. And one of the techniques that went wrong was that every time this dog, the golden retriever, sees a person, the owner say, sit, you have to sit. And the dog kind of go, all I wanted is relax. All I wanted is to sniff the person. All I wanted is there a cookie in there for me? But the owner is so focused on the obedience, making him sit. If he don't sit, he yanks on the leash, stab him with a zap collar. That got on for about 2 years. The dog was actually put on Prozac, one of Ramos' class lectures on dogs. And later on came to me and I found out, Prozac, don't need it. All you need, get the dog around people, and found out he liked liver treats, so people just started handing him liver treats, and we asked for no obedience whatsoever, just making sure that he builds a positive association with it. So really good question, because we see that a lot, and just to get regular, everyday people to understand the difference between behavior modification work and classic just regular obedience training is a huge difference. But it can also be a trainer's training challenge too, which I do face that almost every day. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah, good boy. Yeah, next question. Any questions? Well, okay. Yeah, you love me. I know. Yeah. I mean, speaking about Ramo, Chow is about a year old, right? Almost a year old. One of the things that lately at Ramo's last class, I took the time to explain to all my students. One of the biggest things I learned lately when I went to Dog Scout camp, I was training chickens. And one of the things that inspired me when I was training chickens was, where are we rushing to? And that was a question that I think I left Ramo's class and the class and the owner to think about at the end of class. They wanted the dog to do, by week 5, sit and stay, go to the bed, park it, leave it, sit, lie down, all that thing. I go, you got 15 more years ahead of you. The biggest lesson you haven't taught him is just to chill. Take some time, smell the roses around the road. I mean, just like people, most importantly. And sometimes the dog needs to learn that there are days we come for school, there are days we come to school and learn just to be relaxed around other people. And I think at the night when Rama did his last class, we did get the dog lying down, rubbing down, chilling down. And for a dog who constantly faces a lot of stress and contrast in his life, it's a really huge lesson for him to learn. Any questions? Yes?
What techniques would you use for dogs that, if you have them outside and cars go by or people on bikes, they tend to want to charge them?
Technical and charge, it depends on. If you have a dog that has the instinct to want to go chase things, such as herding breed terriers, sometimes even, shepherds, or sometimes it could be just the plain old rescue mutt. We don't know what genetic goes into it. One thing I do want to ask the owner before I tackle the cases, do you give your dog any time to go chase anything? Like, do you have a toy or some kind of things that you play with the dog where it actually meets its instinctual need to want to chase? That could be part of the reason why he sees anything fast moving by, he want to go at it, because that was the only thing he finds is fun to do for 24 hours. And the same thing repeats the next day, because the dog sitting at home going, you know what, I can't turn on the TV, I can't do puzzles, I don't know how to run the spa or the hot tub. So, I mean, either I'm going to find something fast to chase or sit here and I don't know what else to go count clouds or something. So that could be one of the things that a dog really needs to think about. The next thing I'd go and evaluate the case would be the dog's background. Like, the car may have hurt the dog before it happens to be a rescue dog. Sometimes you can find out the history, sometimes you can't. The next thing I would do is that finding out exactly how urgent is the case. One time, I had a border collie that was chasing cars so bad she was hit by 2 vehicles, shattered her back hip. In that case, I did not even think twice. I have to correct the dog. And that was the only one case where I didn't think even at all. I went right into actually using an electronic collar. Part of it is that I do believe that the dog needs to know that the time, right before the dog wants to chase, so no, stop it. Then we do turn the dog around, doing touch, like what Chester learned as well. Lots and lots of treat, tell him to come back. Putting him on a long leash so that I can at least know where the dog is going to be. Again, you can do the exact same technique that I know I mentioned a little while ago. Finding out where the dog's threshold is. If it's a car, then you kind of need to test it out just to see the information. Is a car 25 feet away, driving at 60 miles per hour, making your dog really upset because of the speed? Or is a person riding a bicycle? So I would say you cannot do 5 things all at once. I usually would make this little sign in my training class like this. It's like a little big old funnel. You want everything. The dog gets issue with car, trucks, SUV, bicycle, skateboard, kids. I don't know, everything that moves fast, chickbun, squirrel, you name it, birds. Then only one thing that can go down is one at a time. So when you grind this little pieces, it goes one at a time. You can tackle that a little by little. If a dog doesn't like a certain kind of vehicle, which I do have one time, a dog only barks at a dark color car, It has to be some kind of sedan, SUV type like size, not a typical mini sports car, based on because she was actually chased by him. So sometimes finding all this information, if you know it, it's important. And again, dogs do have goods and bads. If you can link the good and bad together, it's an easy fix. What else would I use in situations like that? Calming remedy. I would do calming cap. One of the products called calming cap made by Petsmart. You put it over the dog's head, so when you go outside, it dims the visual stimulation. So at least at this situation, I'll tell you why it is so cool. It binds the owner sometimes. The owner cannot have a dog that's going to lunge at cars the minute they open the condo door, go, oh, next minute the dog goes crazy, makes the walk not even pleasurable anymore. So I'll put the kind of a blindfold over the dog so the dog at least go, well, I can't really make out whether there's a car passing by or not. Gentle leader sometimes can help because there is pressure point behind the back of the dog's neck. If you're starting to put some gentle pressure applied to it, for some breed, they benefit really nicely with it. Breeds such as Boxer, Pit Bull, Rottweiler, Shepherd, Golden Retriever, anything that had a kind of a decent snout to it, even a Terrier or Jack Russell, that could be a really, really good tip to use. But again, without finding the correct information, assessing the dog's threshold, I won't even go into that case. I will need to make sure the dog is going to be safe when I'm doing those kind of training, especially with chasing car. It is important because of safety. Very, very, very important. Same thing with car anxiety. It's a big topic. Lately, I've been challenged by a pretty tricky case of car anxiety situation. And I think one of the biggest problems here with the car anxiety is that it's costly to treat it because you got to go to the car all the time just to turn on the gas and just sit there, let the car idle, to get the dog in the car, out the car, get a treat out the car. And the owner said, you know what, Elaine, don't worry about treating it because by the time I'm done, I'm going to be broke just buying gas. So finds out that we'll just stop the dog at the porta crate, put a gentle leader on, give him rescue remedy, and take him to school. That's about it. No long distance car ride. But they have to make sacrifices for that for right now, or they gotta get a new job to get the money for gas that they get treated. So sometimes there's reality, but there's also the ideal world. So we gotta deal with it. Yeah. Any questions?
Elaine, do you have any feelings about electric fences?
Yes, I am. Well, personally, very good question. First of all, thank you. I don't like it. I don't like electric fences. I don't like invisible fence. I read up a lot in just all over different resources about how a trainer feels about it. First of all, how would you feel about it? If you cannot see the fences because it's invisible, and you are given this collar, suppose you wear on your neck, if you step out 1 inch past that supposed invisible fence, you get this weird sensation travel through your body that looks like you just got shot. Just imagine that for a person, sometime may just turn it off of behind the invisible fence. Yeah, and then somebody will go, well, I can't put a fence up, I gotta train the dog. Here would be my statement for that. If you haven't trained a dog, basic obedience, such as come, stop, sit, stay, leave it, at least follow me, give me some kind of eye contact, I don't think that person has the right respect to do invisible fences training. If you tie it into doing e-collar, I still kind of debate about the e-collar situation. It really depends. It's not the electronic collar training is the problem. It's the person who's using it is the problem. I think everyone heard the saying, it's never the dog's fault, it's always the owner's fault, it's the application. If I haven't had the respect to teach Brahmo or anybody else how he's supposed to behave, I don't want to just use the electronic collar to tell him what is wrong. I think it is extremely important to the patient of time to teach him what is right before I just put a zap collar on him and zap him. There are another belief where some trainers who have had background in training e-collar, they would debate, go, well, when you put a low vibration or tone on them or some sort, it kind of snaps that fixation, they're going to chase something or bark at something out of them. I do agree there's that study there, but again, it depends on the owner time. Such as, I'm big at using clicker training. One of the things that I learned was if you cannot operate using a clicker to click when a dog sits for you, I'm a little worried about you pushing that button and zap your dog when he is charging on the dog. So I will probably really work on making sure I find the right kind of person that it fits in for an e-collar. Every day at my job, I have people coming in, tell me, I got a Chihuahua, it's like 8 months old, and it barks crazy. Where's the zap thing that I can buy? I look at them like, no, you're not buying a zap thing. Not under my watch. No, absolutely not. First of all, why is your dog yapping? Because I live in a condo, I live in an apartment, and people are passing by and I go, okay. Well, then the next thing I would go would be, well, have you actually teach a dog he can have a calm, stuff with food. The minute people passing by, give them a calm stuff with yummy ground up ham in it. I doubt the dog is going to say goodbye to the calm filled with ground up ham instead of barking. So I mean, the question that you asked kind of broad because the electronic collar training can be invisible fence. It could be e-collar for treating aggression, reactive cases, or regular obedience training. Or you can also tie it with bark collar. Dog is barking and then automatically it gets a correction for it. But my final say would be train first before we look into those concepts. Based on the humane hierarchy, e-collar training is supposedly falling into positive punishment technique. Nowadays, these fancy e-collar equipments are really well made. They're very well made, whereas they have vibration, they also have tone, so it's not necessarily just the shot. So I want to make sure that, finding the right dog, right temperament, and the right product, and definitely get yourself with a trainer who does it right. Learn from the trainer, learn from an expert. I do have actually a colleague, Michael Berkey, does a really, really, really good job doing e-collar in Michigan. I would definitely, find someone who is expert in that field instead of just saying, oh, here's a problem with dogs, how's your e-collar? Call the guy with invisible fence and fix it. Speaking of invisible fence, I have a lot of dogs wear it, saw a squirrel, ran right through it, never came back. Never ever came back. We don't know what happened to these dogs. Part of it could be the setting was wrong. They never trained the dog to light stay in the yard. The design on the chests of the squirrels was so high, and they were afraid to come back because they get that was that. The battery could be malfunctioning. The dog could grow too big. The collar is too tight and getting too big of a shot. I have a dog that was a Labradoodle recently in the class. They didn't ask me that they were going to do the invisible fence training. This dog has been very, very fearful since it was a puppy, and the invisible training actually ruined him completely. Now they came to class, they saw a person that I was training to be a trainer recently, and the lady actually said to me, that person looks like the lady that came and installed the fence, and the dog just completely cowered, never even come out anymore. So again, pick the wrong dog too early, the wrong equipment, you could definitely do some damage to it. So I think finding the right time when the dog is mature, do training first, and then find the right equipment, right trainer, and I'll go from there. So, very good question. It is a really, really common question that almost everybody asks because of the area that we live in, you're not allowed to have fences. Sometimes I would say, if you're not going to train, like today I was asked when I was at work in class, I'd rather you tie it up, I will tie up people than give them an e-collar right away. Any special question? Yes.
I have a rescue dog that he went through some obedience classes, and he was kind of a fearful dog, and he went into one of your training classes, and you totally changed his life. I mean, he's a completely different dog. Could you talk about some of the benefits of trick class?
Yes, definitely. I can talk about the benefit of trick classes. In the case of me and Mike, owner of Bobo, when Bobo came to class, the first impression that I had was that he was afraid of people and also didn't know better how to react around other animals. And he was kind of like, hey, I like food, not so sure about you, and I'm very happy and very glad that Mimi and Mike are very patient people. They understand the needs of their pets. At one point, I remember at the end of beginner class, I saw this dog who has such a high drive. I mean, he was just that little guy go, I starved my whole life on the street, who knows what happened to me, I just love food. When I get a dog who likes food so much, I know one thing down the road is going to be so easy to train could be tricks. One thing that I learned about trick training is actually from my own background, having my own dog, Bean, who was on the show last time. It's a kind of an interesting character. He never excelled and succeeded in obedience training. He finally is 7 years old, finally this morning, I think they always sat together, finally can do obedience stuff. But one of the things that I learned in tricks training was that it really somehow finding confidence. It was something very unusual. It was almost like, hey, you see a person, spin. By the time you're done spinning, you don't see him anymore. He used to be afraid of people, afraid of men. Next thing was touch, bow, shake a paw, and the dog was just offering all this fun stuff, and that was really important. And the thing about benefit of trick training, I think, is because it's fun. It changes the attitude of the owner. That's a really important thing. Why is it important? Again, it's not task-based, such as asking Ramo to sit, asking Ramo to lie down and stay. Trick training changes the attitude of the owner coming into the room going, what are we going to learn next? Are we going to learn how to play the piano? They're like, wow, that's something new, that's something unusual. So that was something that I think was important. And then yes, you're absolutely right. Trick class definitely have changed Bobo's entire life. He is a complete circus dog, I can call it, and he's happy. Because when you're doing tricks, come on, if I have my husband coming in here who would dance, he probably would be a happier person too, instead of sitting here figuring out how to pay bills or something. So I think the attitude when you go into the class makes a difference. I don't think it's me doing amazing work. I think it's your attitude coming into class that changes it. Yeah, I really do. And tricks are actually nice. When I went to Dog Scout of America, I learned a lot of cool things. They call them useful tricks. You only have 15 years or 10 years to live with your dog. Find something useful to teach him. You never know when you're going to need it, but someday something may happen, and who knows, your dog can push a button. That can save someone's life. All these fancy things that golden retrievers can do, Labrador, Service can do, a lot of little guys can do it. I know Bobo can actually pick up a handset and dial numbers to call somebody. But we're onto iPhones now, so that could be the next job when we come to the next trade class. How, sir, I want to dial mom. So you can speak English instead of pick up a good old-fashioned handset phone and dial the number 911. But again, teach them something useful. Make them useful. They only live once. You only live once, and if you're a dog lover, you believe in it, I think teaching them something that you don't know when you're going to use is important. It could start from a very simple trick, but who knows? Recently, I got in my trick class, I had little Shih Tzu poodle, Miso, learning rollover, learning all this fun trick. Now she's onto skateboard, she's onto piano. Who knows? She might be the next, America's Got Talent. Win $1 million ad. I mean, who knows? This dog's only 6 months old right now. She got a bright future ahead of her. She's cute. So she may land a job in Hollywood. Bobo can. Next bountiful ad, something like that. So, very good question. I do like that. Any questions? Anything you guys can think of? Yes.
If your dog is afraid of lightning storm or certain noises, what can you do to help that?
The overall answer to fixing, let's say, tying your entire question into thunder phobia, I can almost represent the entire world of dog trainer. There's no one fix. I think thunder phobia, from all the things that I've learned, all the seminar that I've gone to, I would say is the only one struggle that almost every trainer can draw on. Because the actual thunder causes the dog to go into complete panic. Now, if I break your question down into little pieces, such as the dog is afraid of loud noises or the dark, again, try to minimize that trigger. Look at that, we can do soundtrack. So let's say that I have a dog was afraid of thunderstorm sound. I actually have people go buy a CD. We actually call it the sensitization CD. You can play that CD at a really low volume, barely audible, and during the time that you're playing that sound, you basically feed the dog food, massage them, have them associate something that is great, associate relaxation. I did have a case recently, the dog was terrified of loud noises. Her name is Shayna. I'm working with her recently. She made huge improvement. The person cannot chew bubble gum and make that bubble gum noise because the dog will be completely terrified. Cannot pop bubble wrap because popping bubble wrap is actually her owner's relaxation therapy. And again, it's the loud noises they're talking about. And what I did with Shayna was to have the owner actually do some soundtrack training, pull the trigger further away, toss a treat further away, because the dog doesn't understand proximity, so that's a really big thing there. And it kind of ties into what I just said earlier, a little while ago, finding the dog's like and dislike, living together, go back to classic conditioning, stop a little bit at a time. Calming remedy do work. Massage therapy does work also. Things like rest remedy, any kind of herbal stuff. Thunder shirt can also help, having the pressure to go over the dog. But it really depends on what specific topic it is. Is it just a sound, or is the dog reacting to people walking by with the sound? Is it the light flickering? So you can always find out what they are first.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think what the whole thing with soundtrack training is that when I say these techniques, most of the time the reaction for owner is, huh? Really? And that is right there the turn off of whether the technique is going to work or not, because they don't think it sounds reasonable for them to do it. But once they're open-minded to try these techniques, and those are the people who really truly see results. Shayna, for a long time, she didn't think anything was feasible, but last time when I saw her, I actually got her onto the bubble wrap, and she popped it herself, the dog, who was actually afraid of bubble wrap. I get to see her actually in a couple of weeks to come back. I hope to see more results. And she has thunderphobia. She was actually on medication, believe it or not, every time to tranquilize. But again, if you're asking for thunderphobia, some dogs are really severe to it. We don't know exactly what's causing it. Drugs probably right now is the only really proven complete remedy to it. And you need to talk to your veterinarians about that, find the right kind of medication. If you're not talking about thunderphobia, you just talk about loud noises and things that are unusual, or car horns, whatever noises it might be, same exercise technique that I was talking about, time to relax together. Very good question. Anything else? Okay, cool. Yeah. That was my question. Do you want me to bring him back in
Let me see you bounce, put your back into it now. Baby, let me get you now. Shake it up, shake it up. Let me see you bounce, let me see your body rock. Baby, show me what you got. Take it up, take it up. Let me see you bounce, yeah, up in the ground. Shake it up, shake it up. Let me see you bounce, let me see your body rock. Baby, show me what you got. Take it up, take it up. Let me see you bounce, yeah, up in the ground. DJ gon' play it loud. Brinca, brinca. Let me see you bounce. Brinca, brinca. Let me see you bounce.
If you have any suggestions for the next show, please email me at zoran@zoran-land.com. See you next time.